Our member profile this month features Tim Theisen, who is an attorney with the law firm of Malzahn and Associates. They are located on Jackson Street in Anoka. I talked with Tim recently about his services and his membership with the Chamber of Commerce. Tim, thank you for your time and talking to us as our member profile here on the Chamber Report. Talk about where you're located, and let's get into your practice here as well.
Well, I'm located in the Union Building right across the street from the courthouse at 229 Jackson Street. I always tell my clients I'm right across the street from Billy's, and they all seem to find me pretty well.
Sure.
I've been here for 3 years now, and prior to that I worked for 2 years as a law clerk out in McLeod County in Glencoe.
Oh, okay, all right. And you specifically practice in two areas, family law and bankruptcy law. Why don't we get into that a little bit and talk about that?
Well, the family law is probably the bulk of my practice. It's a lot of litigation before the courts, mostly here in Anoka County, but I get into a lot of the surrounding counties as well. The bankruptcy is something that's over the past few years has been a growing area in the law. Sometimes people like to watch the bankruptcy filings to see as a sort of an economic indicator. In '94, bankruptcy filings were down, and all of us bankruptcy lawyers were all sad, and everybody thought that the economy was turning up, and now it looks like bankruptcy filings are back on the rebound, which you know, I guess it makes business good for me, but it may mean that there may be another slowdown coming. I don't know. One of the things that I have found is that there's been a real correlation between the two areas of family law and bankruptcy. In fact, it's hard to really be just a family law attorney or just a bankruptcy attorney, because you really need to know a lot about the other area in order to be effective in either one of them.
Interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people will find that that one follows the other. For instance, a lot of times when people see a marriage deteriorating, a lot of times there's going to be some financial problems, and where there was one roof and they were barely making it, they'll find that when there's two roofs and it's two sets of attorney's fees, all of a sudden, a lot of times in a divorce, that bankruptcy becomes inevitable. So sometimes they'll do people will do a bankruptcy first and then get divorced. Other times they think that they can get through it, and they get through their divorce, but then they realize that either with child support or with trying to raise children on just child support, it gets real difficult, and bankruptcy becomes inevitable. What I try to do in that situation is ensure that they're not going to rack up several $1,000s in fees with me and then file bankruptcy on me. But sometimes I go into it full well knowing that that's what I have to do for my client, and that's just part of business sometimes.
Right. Both areas, family law and bankruptcy law, deal with great emotions with people. Do you find sometimes that you get yourself caught in the middle of when it's involved with this? Absolutely.
See, what happens a lot of times, you know, people are going through a very difficult time. In fact, I guess one of the most surprising things is a lot of times I'll see people come in here for divorce and they're not emotional. Those are the surprising cases.
Oh, really?
People who've been separated for several months, and they're, you know, very straightforward, and they know that they want to keep the lawyer's fees down, so they pretty much work stuff out before they even come into my office. But a lot of times the other cases, and I don't fault people for this at all, whether it's a 2-year marriage they thought was going to be for the rest of their life, or a 20-year marriage that has been their life, it's real difficult for people to divide the issues between the personal issues, as in who's going to get the silverware, or you know, who's going to feed the kids, what time or whatever. They get into smaller issues sometimes when they're not looking at the big issues, such as where's the equity in the house, how's that going to be divided, who's going to have custody, and those sorts of issues that sometimes everything's an issue for the people when what the lawyers want to do is focus on the big issues first, and then when the dust settles, hopefully, we always hope the little issues, and I hate to call them little issues because they're always important. Every issue is always important to my client, but for me, I consider them sometimes the more minor issues because I know that it's not going to be cost effective for my client to hire me to fight some of these less big battles.
Right. Tim, do you find that with the heightened emotions that take place with both family and bankruptcy law that you are educating your clients about the law and what that does require?
You know, and I guess one of the big things that's really surprised me is that there's a lot of people really know how the system works. That's one of the things that's really stunned me. People come in here and, for instance, I think it's pretty much well known that child support is 25% of the obligor's income. That's for one child. And I think that's just something that that people are pretty well aware of, and it's something that you just don't fight about. We can try to fight about it. We can take it to court, and all the judge is going to do is take out his calculator and take net income times 0.25. So you find out that it becomes a real non-issue, and you don't try to spend your client's money fighting child support.
Tim, you were involved in a major change in the law last year that dealt with unemployment. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, that was a case that involved a client of mine who was a single dad, and he worked at a factory in Plymouth, and on a Friday at the end of his shift at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon they said, okay, starting Monday we want you to work evenings. And he said, well, I can't because I'm a dad. I've got a kid. You can't find daycare in the evening. That's why they call it daycare. So he tried all weekend to find daycare, and Monday morning he just figured, well, I'm going to show up to work. So he showed up to work, and they said, no, you're on evenings now. And he said, well, I can't work evenings. And they said, well, then come in tomorrow. We'll let you have today off, but come in tomorrow. So he tried and tried and tried and went to every place he could. Couldn't find any child care. So after a few more meetings and trying to work things out, the employer let him go. So he went down to apply for unemployment benefits, and when you apply for unemployment benefits, you will get them as long as you did not engage in misconduct. For instance, a person who screws off and never shows up for work can't get unemployment, but if you're laid off, you will. So that kind of became the issue. And he went through the whole administrative system, and they found that he did engage in misconduct for not showing up to work.
According to the law at the time.
According to the law. It had been a 1954 case that had been applied ever since, that failure to show up for work due to domestic duties is essentially misconduct.
Wow.
And that's the way it had been interpreted for all that time. And so he went through 3 steps in the administrative process. He came to me, we went to the Court of Appeals, and we were able to prevail at the Court of Appeals. And then the state appealed, because the state becomes the adverse party in these, because they're the ones who's actually paying for it. Up to the Supreme Court we went. The whole process took about 1.5 years, and finally, in another unanimous decision, the Supreme Court said, no, this is not misconduct, and he was enabled to keep his unemployment benefits.
Wow. Wow, that's quite a victory for you.
Yeah, got some exposure. I was on TV and the news and stuff.
Oh, that's good. Well, good. Well, it's good to see that at least the court system is willing to change with the times.
Exactly.
Do you find there to be some discrepancy between the court system and perhaps the lawmakers, the legislature, as far as changing laws?
Well, sure. Well, you know, I mean, in Minnesota, all the judges are elected officials, just as our the legislators. The judge's job, of course, is to follow the laws that the legislators make. It's not the judge's job to make the law. But the fact is, when you get a certain set of facts like this, and the way I just described it makes it seem real obvious that this was not misconduct, and you get a group of 7 highly trained and highly intelligent people who are the justices of our highest court, and they can read the same statutes that you or I can read, and they're just going to say, I should say you or I or my client, and my client knew that he did not engage in misconduct, and he felt that he could convince the 7 Supreme Court justices of that same idea. He needed my help to articulate that a little bit, and he was right.
That's great. Good. We're getting close to the end here. Any suggestions or any comments that you would like to make to the public, specifically regarding the areas where you practice? Any helpful hints or anything that you could do that might be informative to them?
Well, I guess in family law, if you're in a marriage that's not working, of course, if I never try to encourage marriages to break up. I guess that's the first thing I would always want people to know. If it's a situation where you find it's becoming inevitable, or if you fear that the spouse may be hiding assets or running up debts, it'd be a good idea to consult with an attorney right away. If you want to save on attorney's fees, and I always tell my clients, do you want to put your own kids to college, or do you want to put my kids through college? And usually they say they want to put their own kids through college. There's some who say, I want to pay the lawyer no matter what. Those aren't the kind of clients I'm looking for. But I guess what I would tell people is if it's a situation where you trust your spouse, it's just a situation where you just don't want to be under the same roof, you can save a lot on attorney's fees by just meeting with your spouse, going through the issues, trying to get an agreement, and then having the attorney put it all down into legalese and get it through the court system for you. And those are the ones where the people really help themselves, and it makes
makes the process a little bit
quicker. It's always a painful thing to do, and it just makes it ever so more painless.
Interesting. You have been a member of the Chamber how long?
For 3 years.
3 years. Why did you join the Chamber?
Well, when I first came to Anoka, I guess I didn't really have any experience with this community, and it was a real good way for me to get involved in the community, find out what's going on, where the businesses are going in, and just to get my name known.
All right. You have, what brought you to Anoka? You said you were not familiar with the community. Why did you locate here?
Well, I wanted to be in an outlying community. There's too many lawyers downtown. That's Minneapolis or St. Paul. And I figured if I was going to basically start my own practice, I wanted to get into an outlying community. I am a native of the Twin Cities, so I wanted to be close enough. Yet I wanted to be in an outlying area where it's growing and where there's fewer attorneys, and it's easier to get known within the community and build a practice.
Good, good. Well, Tim, thank you very much for your time and talking with us about your practice, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.